Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling one of the biggest questions out there. What's the real connection between what goes on inside your head and, well, what you actually do?
Okay, let's start with something simple, right? A smile. You see someone smile. But what's really going on? Is it genuine joy? Are they just being polite? Or, hey, maybe it's pure sarcasm. And that right there, that's the whole puzzle, isn't it? The outside action doesn't always tell you the full story of the inside feeling.
So that's the big question we're digging into. How do those private, internal worlds of ours, what we call consciousness, actually link up with and even cause our actions out here in the real world?
All right, let's jump straight into what's called the mind-body mystery. And look, this isn't a new problem. For literally centuries, as long as we've been able to think about our own thoughts, we've been wrestling with this. How does a feeling, an idea, turn into a physical action?
And I mean, this isn't just some fringe philosophical debate. We're talking about a question that has stumped the absolute greatest thinkers, philosophers, scientists, you name it. It's a mystery that's tangled up in the very definition of what it means to be, well, us.
So to really wrap our heads around this, we kind of have to look back at the history of it all. Think of it like a cold case file. The way people have approached this has changed a lot over the centuries, leaving behind this trail of really fascinating clues.
And what's so wild is how much the thinking has swung back and forth, just like a pendulum. You had ancient thinkers like Aristotle who saw a clear link between thought and action. Then, boom, along comes Descartes in the 17th century, and he completely separates the mind from the body. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the behaviorists just ignored the mind altogether. They only cared about what they could see and measure. It really took the cognitive revolution to bring the study of our inner world back into the picture.
Okay, so before we dive into the really modern stuff, we've got to get our terms straight. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. Think of this as our investigator's toolkit for what consciousness actually means.
First up, you've got phenomenal consciousness. Sounds complicated, but it's not. It's simply the raw feeling of an experience. It's the what it's like part. The actual experience of seeing the color red or tasting your morning coffee. It's that private movie playing inside your head that only you can see.
Then there's access consciousness. This is a bit different. This is when the information in your head is available for you to actually use, to reason with, to talk about, to act on. So you don't just see red, you can think, that's red, and use that knowledge to pick a ripe apple instead of a green one. That's access consciousness. And last but not least, we have self-consciousness. This one's probably the most familiar. It's that awareness of you as an individual, the sense that you are a unique self, separate from everything and everyone else. It's the I at the center of your universe.
All right, with those definitions in our back pocket, let's get to the modern-day clues. And this is where things start to get, well, really weird. Scientists today are finding some truly fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling evidence from neuroscience and AI that's shaking up everything we thought we knew.
And that leads us right to a huge controversial clue, the problem of free will. Because there's this one experiment in particular that really throws a wrench into one of our most basic beliefs, the idea that we are consciously in control of our choices. It's called the Libet experiment. It sounds simple. People were just told to flick their wrist whenever they felt like it. But here's the bombshell. Brain scans showed that the brain activity for that wrist flick started before the person consciously decided to do it. Let that sink in. Their brain was gearing up for the action before their conscious mind was even in on the plan. So, what does that even mean? Does our brain just decide things on its own and our consciousness is just playing catch-up, telling itself a story about being in charge? Or is consciousness still involved, maybe acting like a final veto power over these unconscious urges? This is a huge debate, and honestly, the jury is still very much out.
Okay, let's switch gears to the next big clue. And it's a frontier that's exploding right now, artificial intelligence. This is forcing us to look at the whole mystery from a completely different angle, because we're building machines that can act in ways that are shockingly human.
And this brings up a really interesting idea called functionalism. The theory basically goes like this. If a machine's behavior is totally indistinguishable from a human's, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then maybe we should just go ahead and call it a duck. Maybe it is conscious.
But here's the billion-dollar question, right? Is just acting smart the same thing as having genuine subjective awareness? Can an AI perform all these amazing tasks and still have nothing going on inside? Know what it's like to be that AI?
This isn't just a tech question. It's one of the biggest philosophical questions of our era.
Look, this whole puzzle isn't just some abstract academic exercise. Figuring out this connection between consciousness and behavior has massive, real-world implications for pretty much everything. How we treat mental health, how we teach our kids, how we build our future.
Just think about it. In therapy, something like CBT is built on the idea that if you change your actions, you can actually change your conscious thoughts and feelings. It works. In education, when we teach students metacognition, basically thinking about their own thinking, they get better at consciously steering their own learning. And with AI, well, it defines the entire future of how we're going to build and interact with these new forms of intelligence.
So in the end, it's not a simple one-way street where your thoughts cause your actions. It seems to be much more of a dynamic loop. Our consciousness guides what we do, for sure. But then, what we do, our behaviors, feeds back and actually shapes our consciousness in return. It's a constant dance between the two.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty heavy thought to chew on. As our technology gets better and better at simulating life, at faking it, how are we ever going to decide what or who is actually conscious? This isn't science fiction anymore. It's a real ethical and philosophical test that we, right now, are going to have to face.